Morning. Oh, blimey.
Good morning.
This mic is clearly not working. Let's try that once more. Good morning.
Good morning.
Blimey, there's about 4,000 of you in this room and I couldn't hear a thing. I thought I'd gone deaf. I'm Rob Hadfield, as the slide alludes to, and I'm the Technical and Training Director at Get Safe Online. I've got a very brief presentation here, not too many slides. I'll tell you a tiny little bit about me first, because it is relevant to the presentation. I spent the first 33 years of my working life working for an airline called British Airways. You may be familiar with them. I started life as an aircraft engineer, fixing things like Concorde. The older people may be familiar with what that looks like. And latterly, I was very fortunate to move around in the organisation. In the last sort of, well, since about 2000, I've worked in the cyber security world. And I was head of security awareness for British Airways when I left, which was 6 years ago. So that's a little bit about me. I've worked for Get Safe Online ever since, to be honest. But I will come back to some of that stuff a little bit later. I'm going to ask a few questions of the audience at some point, if you don't mind putting your hands up here and there at the relevant points. So I've titled my presentation, How to Stay Safe in Cyberspace. And it's not rocket science, which wouldn't be a problem if it was, because fortunately, having a background like mine, I do understand a little bit about rocket science, which is quite useful. I've got 3 points on my agenda. I'm sure you can remember 3 points, and I'm only going to give you 5 tips that you can take away and do something about, so real action points. So the 3 things are a little bit about who we are, Get Safe Online, who we are, what we do, then why you're a target. So I guess this audience is predominantly made up of SMEs, and I'm going to tell you if I was a criminal, which I'm not, but if I was, why I'd be targeting you guys, and why that makes perfect sense. And then the last bit, obviously, about how do you protect against the likes of me if I was a criminal, and simple things that you can do. So Get Safe Online, we're a public-private partnership, so we partner with the public sector and the private sector. Private sector at the top, some fairly big names there, as you can imagine, public sector at the bottom, and we currently partner with 40 of the 43 police forces in the UK, and we deliver training to officers. We do a variety of bits and pieces with those different forces around the country, and I spend a lot of my time educating police officers in this very line of work. And I spent last week up in Cumbria, avoiding the floods, which was quite a challenge. It did rain quite a lot, but doing a lot of good work all around the country. So why would I target an SME? Well, I think Gary alluded to it earlier, actually. He talked about a few things. So money starts right at the top, doesn't it? It's always going to be right at the top. Intellectual property. It's amazing how many SMEs I talk to who don't think they have anything worth stealing. Now, I just want a quick show of hands here, and I'm talking personally, okay? So think personally, forget work for a minute. Put your hand up if you've got £500,000 in your current account today. Just me and you, sir. Thank you. Hence the lack of Ferraris in the car park, I guess. Hope you didn't damage mine when you parked. So none of you, apart from the liar in the middle. Who works for an organisation, small business, that has £500,000 in its current account today? Oh, lots of hands going up. So if I target you as individuals, I see you as a poor group of people. If I target you as businesses, I see you as a rich group of people. So that makes more sense to target you as a business, because most of you haven't got much money in the bank. To be honest, if I said, who's got more than a couple of £1,000 in the bank, as we're near the end of the month and we're near Christmas, I don't think there've been many hands go up. Do you operate your bank account like I do? Some at the beginning, overdraft at the end. Are we all in that same boat? Yeah. So if a criminal targets my bank account, if he gets it at the wrong time of the month, he can help himself to my overdraft. You're more than welcome. There's a little bit here about, are you an SME or do you form part of someone's supply chain? And this matters. When I worked for British Airways, we had tens of thousands of suppliers. And we thought of them as our supply chain. And they mattered. They were really, really important. They put fuel on aeroplanes, they put food on aeroplanes, they supplied spare parts, etc. They really matter. If someone talked to me about SMEs, not interested in SMEs, nothing to do with British Airways, who are they? Not interested. Actually, it's the same thing. SMEs are the supply chain of the whole country. So you guys are supplying the big boys, if you like, who provide services to the whole country. So the SME is critical. And as long as you use the word supply chain, the big organisations take notice. The minute you use the word SMEs, they're not interested, surprisingly. So I think that's an interesting one. So potentially you have access to large companies. Do any of you have access to other company computer systems as part of your role, as your job? Yeah, quite a few of you. British Airways had when I left, about 40,000 employees. And yet we had over 100,000 computer users. So 60,000 people were using our computers and didn't work for the organisation. Any idea who they were? Supply chain people, yeah. And most of the time we didn't actually know who those people were. Keeping tracks of your own people's hard. Keeping track of other people is even harder. So when you've got 60,000 people accessing your systems who don't work for you, that's a challenge for a big organisation. But you're an easy target. Who's got a 25-strong security team back at work in information security? Anybody? What? Yeah, you're cheating. You work for a bank. Yeah, NatWest Bank here. Thank you very much. Yeah. Who will be speaking later. So apart from NatWest, who are here, has anyone got a 25-strong information security team? Two people. You work for fairly large organisations, yeah? Right. If you're a smaller organisation, chances are you don't have that many people. In fact, you'd be lucky if you've got a computer bloke and a dog. All good security people have a dog. So the perfect crime then, that's what that looks like, I reckon. I reckon the perfect crime looks like that. Now, if someone took £100 out of your bank account, your personal bank account, what's the first thing you'd do? If all of a sudden you look at your bank statement and you think, I don't recognise that transaction for £100, what would you then do? Who's the first port of call? Ring the bank. Blame your husband. Good answer. Yeah. I'm not going to blame your husband. Never met him. So you're going to ring the bank, and the bank will say, OK, can you come down, fill a bit of paperwork in, we'll have a look at it. So you fill the paperwork in. A couple of weeks later, that money gets put back in your bank account, yeah? Someone's stolen it. Something happened. All good, yes? End of story? Typically. How many people would then go, oh, what I now need to do is report that to the police? How many people would actually do that for £100 that got refunded? Two of you. There's about 400 people in here, and 2 of you think that reporting that to the police is a good idea. So from a criminal point of view, I think that's a good option, because only 2 of you are going to report it out of the vast majority of you. So if we've got 400 people, what's your maths like? We've got bank at the front here. Woke up all of a sudden there. If I took £100 out of everyone's bank account, times that by 400 people in the room, how much? £40,000. I could do that potentially in about a couple of weeks. It's not bad, is it? £40,000. And most of that will not get reported to the police. So if it doesn't get reported, are the police going to come looking for me? No, of course they're not. So if I take £100, let's say they do come looking. Let's say some of you report it. Hang on a minute, it's £100. Let's be honest, do you think the police are going to do much for £100? No, good answer. Right, so I use a disguise. I'll show you how to do this in a second. I'm going to leave no fingerprints because I didn't actually touch your bank or your money or your... Where's the scene of crime? Your house, the bank, or where I was? Bank, actually, you think? Any advance on the bank? Where I was? It were a cafe. Do I look like the sort of guy who spends time in a cafe? What are you saying? OK, yeah, that's fair. What country am I going to be in when I'm doing this? Anywhere. Not here. I'm not going to do it here because these guys have got jurisdiction here, whereas they don't have much jurisdiction in Russia. And for £100, are you going to pursue it? Of course you're not. So I'm going to be somewhere else. It's probably not going to get reported, and if I'm not too greedy, new Ferrari coming soon. Make sense? Seems like a good option, doesn't it? Makes me wonder why I'm standing here quite often on a regular basis. I do wonder. The great thing about the internet is nobody knows you're a dog. I love the picture. The internet offers a level of anonymity from reasonable to very good. So as a criminal, I can just be reasonably anonymous, which is probably all I need to be, or I can be very anonymous, which is probably a good option if I'm going to be a criminal. And that's easy to do. That's not difficult to get that level of anonymity right up. And I think Gary touched on the dark web earlier. If I choose to live in the dark web, I'm pretty anonymous. You ain't going to find me easily, which is all I need. So that's quite an easy thing to do as a criminal. We've also heard about prevention. Now, these two quotes are really quite relevant. One's very old, Benjamin Franklin. For those of you that have all gone metric, it's 62.5 grams, I think. I think that's the conversion. I'm still a bit old school, and aeroplanes are still built in imperial measures, so I'm still good with my pounds and ounces. That's a good quote. That's even better. We ain't going to arrest our way out of this problem. This isn't like a bit of petty car crime in the street where you can arrest a few young lads and throw them in prison and that then stops. You don't know who these people are. So prevention is the only solution, really. It's the only really good solution. But the good news is it's really easy. You can do so much yourself in terms of prevention. Now, I've got to ask a question. Now, this is going to seem unbelievably random. Yesterday, I was trying to weld some aluminium. I'm an engineer, therefore I think I can do that. Can't be that hard, can it? However, turns out, a little trickier than I thought. I've done a lot of welding in my time, mild steel and stainless steel. Does anyone know how to weld aluminium using a MIG welder? Put your hand up now. Some of you don't understand the question, which is fine. That's not a problem. Does anyone have experience in welding aluminium with a MIG welder?
It's really hard.
It's really hard. That is true. It's very hard. Yeah? Anybody? Damn, I was hoping for a bit more help. However, I assumed that was probably going to be the answer. Random group of people. So what I did, as I do with everything, is I went out of my garage to my office. Right? And what I fired up was something called YouTube. Oh, is there anything that you cannot find out on YouTube? What I did find out is it's very difficult, as you said. It is very difficult, but it's not impossible. And I've watched many videos now of how to weld aluminium with a MIG welder. Those of you that really want to know, YouTube it. Anything you want to know about this subject, YouTube it. Someone's not only done it, but they videoed it and narrated it. They're generally American, though. Can't win them all, can you? But most of what you might want to know about this subject is somewhere on the internet. And I will refer back to that in a second. So, tip number 1. Can you remember 5 tips, do you think? Do you think you can remember 5? If you can't, write them down. Tip number 1. Put a pin on it or a password on it. Who's got one of them? Smartphone. Yeah? Put your hand up if you've got one of these and you've not got any security at the front of it, i.e. some sort of pin or some sort of... You've not. Keep your hands up. And keep your hand up if you use it for email. So quite a few of you got one of them, no security at the front, and you use it for email. I would put a pin on it before the end of the day. Because if I find this, I'm sure Cal will agree, having access to your email is about the first thing I need to do. Because once I've got access to your email, I will use this for something you never thought you could use it for. No one ever described this. They use it to talk about a phone, a camera. This is called a password reset device. Once I've got access to your email on this device, I go to Amazon, put your email address in, and I say, I've forgot my password. And Amazon, send me your new one to my password reset device. That's this one I've just found in the street with no pin on it. I've now got your Amazon password. How long did that take? About a minute. So just by finding that, I get your Amazon password. And every other password that will reset through your email. I don't know of many that won't. So if you've got one of them, with no security at the front of it, and you do email, think about doing that one thing. The same applies to one of these things. If you can turn on a laptop and need no password to get into the laptop, I know Apple have had a bit of an issue. Just this morning, if those of you who watch the news. But if you can get into your laptop without a password, you need to put a password at the front of it. Because it's very convenient not having a password, yes? Burglars agree. They think it's massively convenient if there's no password on your laptop. Hugely convenient. And I would suggest keep your password safe along with all your other passwords and consider using a password vault or safe. If you're not sure what they are, YouTube, Google, you will find them. App stores, loads of them. Internet security software, you've probably heard of this. We used to call it antivirus software. It does a few more things these days. Some of this stuff is free. So if you're really skint, or you don't like spending money, Microsoft Security Essentials or Windows Defender, as it's now called, is free. AVG do some products free. Now, you could argue that the paid-for products are slightly better. I'm sure they may well be. But if you haven't got any of this, going to a free product is significantly better than having nothing. Significant step forward in your security. This is really essential for your machines. If you pay for it, typically you're looking at sort of £30. If you're a BT customer, they provide this for free to users. Now, small businesses might be a bit different. Internet service providers, some of the banks provide some of this stuff for free. You may as well take advantage of the stuff that they're going to give you for nothing. Typically what it does all the usual sort of bits, antivirus, firewalls, scanning, and a list of other things. Anyone got kids? Anyone got kids in here? That's probably why you've not got Ferraris. Parental controls, another great thing if you've got kids around the house, very useful sort of products around that sort of space. Very important that you have some. And then update your operating system and all your apps or your other software, whatever that might be. Might sound a bit obvious, but the last issue that we saw with the NHS WannaCry, predominantly that was due to lack of updating of operating systems. Yes, some of them were using Windows XP, which was a bit tragic. However, a lot of them weren't using Windows XP and still got hit because they hadn't patched, as we call it. Top tip, set it to auto where possible. Let it automatically do it. You then don't have to remember to do it every second Tuesday of the month or whenever Microsoft get round to sending patches out. So update your operating system and your apps. Typically, that costs you nothing. That's free. There's no charge to that. Okay. We have a speaker this afternoon by the name of David. Very, very good, but a little bit scary. Tiny little bit scary. And he's going to cover some stuff around social media that really will, When I first saw it, I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. Use of the word interesting is interesting. Social media is the opposite of privacy. I always think it's funny that Facebook have got privacy controls. Really? I worked for BA for 33 years. A lot of my friends still travel rather a lot. At the airport, just off to Barbados for a week. Dogs in the kennels, please rob my house. They don't need to put that bit. I add that little bit myself. You are on the internet somewhere already. I did a quick search before I came here of small businesses in this area. Now you're worried. And I found all sorts of websites that have got photographs on of the directors, marketing managers, all sorts of people. Are you on your website? Is there detail about how to contact you on your website? Yeah, almost certainly, because that's what websites are good for. So I can find out who you are, what business you run, what your phone number is, then I can go to your social media profile, and the list goes on and on and on. And I can find out lots and lots about you before I start my attack. I can do a bit of research. And that will take about half an hour to thoroughly research who you are, what you like, where your kids go to school, etc. There's a massive amount of information that people put on there. So do be very careful what you share. This is really important, the aggregation of data. Putting one little bit of data out there isn't desperately harmful. When I link that to another bit of data, and another bit of data, and another bit of data, I can start working things out. I don't need your kid's date of birth to work it out. Here we are at Johnny's 4th birthday party, posted on the 25th of December. I can work out when he was born, because my maths is good enough. So I've now got your kid's date of birth and their name, etc., etc. So what are you disclosing on there? I see loads of information disclosed. If you've got one of these devices, these are wonderful. I think David's going to mention these later. Location services. I mentioned it was a password reset device. Personal tracker. Personal tracking device. Why do criminals keep one of these in the pocket when they commit crime? Why do they do that? I've yet to understand that. They are fake, aren't they? Yeah, because it does place you at the scene. Really. Not very bright sometimes. And then the last bit, a picture paints 1,000 words. There's a lot of information in photographs that you don't always realise. So be very, very careful what you are sharing out there. Right. This is probably my favourite subject. Educate users. I cannot stress this enough. You can spend as much money as you like on computer security, technical controls as they're called. You can have the best security in the world. But if one of your employees clicks on that link in that email or opens that attachment, you can have the best security on the planet. It probably will not save you from that click. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about, click. A little bit of education doesn't have to go a long way in this world. Very, very important. However, if you think cybersecurity training is expensive, try ignorance. That's really expensive. Your employees can be your greatest asset. Employees are often known as the human firewall. We hear that term on a fairly regular basis. And your employees can be the difference between getting infected and not getting infected by being vigilant. And that vigilance also applies on the telephone as well. I see lots of attacks of organisations that don't come through the computer initially. The phone rings and it's someone saying an invoice hasn't been paid, or they're from Microsoft and you've got a problem with your computer. Oh yeah, that old chestnut. Who's heard of the Microsoft scam or whatever? They call it computer service fraud, don't they? Who's heard of that? Anyone not heard of it? Put your hand up if you've never heard of this scam. One person, no, a couple of people, right, okay. I think that just goes to prove. This has been around a few years. My mum got caught with this about 4 years ago. And it's very easy to assume, because I've seen that scam, that everyone's aware of it. We've got 2 people in the room who are not familiar with it. Today is someone's first day online. So let's not forget that. I've been using the internet pretty much since it was invented. But today is someone's first time on the internet. Now that might be a young person, or it may be an old person, or it might be a middle-aged person. There's no age when you first go online. It could be any age. There's a Nigerian bloke who sends me emails. What? Is it? What? Does he send them to you as well? Hardly ever. Who's not had an email from a Nigerian bloke with a lot of money to try and get it out of the country? He's a prince, obviously. No? You've all seen the email? Just remember, some people have never seen that email, ever. So as much as we find that Nigerian scam funny, because it's been around for the last, 20 years, certainly 15 years that I'm aware of, some people have never seen that. So just assuming, God, how did you fall for that? Well, that's because it's the first time they've ever seen it. Quite easy to fall for something when you've never come across it. So do be aware of that, that some people have not got the experience that you've got. Has anyone been on an aeroplane? Safe question, I always think. It used to be when I was at work at British Airways, most people had travelled, oddly. So you've all been on all travelled reasonably? Not everybody maybe, but most of you have been on an airplane. Okay, then you should be familiar with this. You know, you get on and you sit down and they do that safety announcement. Yeah, you're familiar with it. I'll just go through that. They go on about in the unlikely event of an emergency. I like the way they always put the word unlikely. In the unlikely event of an emergency, leave the aircraft by the nearest exit, taking nothing with you. Heard that? It's familiar? Yeah, of course you have. That's not complicated. That's a sentence, isn't it? That's a sentence. How long is that sentence? Is it a long one or is it a mediocre one? Is that difficult to understand? No, it's not difficult, is it? Now, what I want you to do, though, don't keep looking at it. I don't want a reminder. Just how long do you reckon you could remember that for? You could remember that for a while. Say a minute, maybe 2 minutes there. You're bright enough. You look quite a bright audience, actually. Look quite on the money, really on the ball. So you can all remember that. You reckon you could remember that? You probably remember that. What day is it today? Wednesday. It's not a trick question. You probably still remember that at the weekend, I'm guessing. Yeah? You think you could remember that sentence? It's not... Roughly. You don't have to remember the exact wording. I'm not bothered. So you first saw that, what? Coming up for a minute, 2 minutes ago? You're still all right with it? Still understand it? You don't need it explained any further? Good. Okay, just thought I'd test you. So that's a simple instruction, isn't it? That's not like don't click on links in emails or don't click on attachments and you've then got to remember that for the rest of your life. This is 2 minutes. We're talking 2 simple minutes. So if that's so simple and you lot are not having any trouble remembering, how many people in here? 400? That's 747 full. 747, big aeroplane. Yeah, you just about fill a 747. Some people in first class at the front, rest of you. I'm right at the front here. I'm really. Rest of you, well, you are poor. You admitted that earlier. So you sit down the back. Right. So you've remembered that that is quite important, yeah? Good. 2 minutes has passed. Now, this was a British Airways 777 departing Las Vegas a couple of years back now. They'd heard that 2 minutes before the engine exploded and caught fire on the runway as it taxied. Well, it was on the takeoff run. They just opened the throttles, and all of a sudden there's this very loud bang, and the engine exploded and it caught fire. So the pilot stopped the aeroplane and told everyone to evacuate. 2 minutes before that, they were told, taking nothing with you. Now, who's been down an aircraft slide? Few of you. In anger or for fun? I've only done it for fun. I did it when I was an apprentice on a TriStar. Done it due to an evacuation or just for fun? Oh, really? Oh, fantastic. I'll talk to you later. Anyone else? Just for fun, anybody? Or in training to be cabin crew? No. I did this for fun. And I got to the top of the slide and looked down. It's on a TriStar, quite a big aeroplane. Looked down, thought, Christ, that's high. And they're really quite tall. This guy has got a wheelie bag and some sort of hand. Now, how do you do that with that on your chest? A simple instruction that's potentially life-saving, instantly ignored 2 minutes after it happened. 2 minutes. And this matters. This stuff matters. This ain't like clicking on an email. So if you think educating your staff simple, just tell them, don't click on emails, think again. If you want them to remember that for any length of time, that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be hard work. You're really going to have to work at that. I do like the picture, though. Coming back to rockets. NASA once said about its rockets, we can make them faster, safer, cheaper. Pick 2. 2. You can have any 2. Which one do you want? Faster and safer. We all view it differently. The astronauts used to say that they're sitting on top of a piece of equipment of 2 million parts, that the companies that got the ability to make those parts were the cheapest bidders. Yeah? Would you have gone up in one? Not a chance. Now, this brings me on to this little model here. It's a very useful model. You've got limited resources in terms of time and money, I'm guessing. It's a useful model. You need to put things in place in your organisation in terms of security that we call controls. So things like internet security software, passwords, etc., etc. And the idea is they reduce risk, not to zero. There is no such thing as zero risk. But they will cost you money and they will have an effect on usability of your systems. Passwords make life hard for users. End of story. They make life hard. They're quite cheap though, but they do make life hard. But they do reduce the risk of being hacked if you use decent passwords. This is about balancing those 3 things. Risk reduction, which is what we want, how much you want to spend on it, and how much inconvenience you're going to have for your users. And that's a balance that's not easy to strike, and it will be different for everyone in the audience. You've all got locks on your doors, yeah? Some of you have got alarms on your houses and your properties, in your business premises. How many of you got windows on your how many of you got bars on the windows of your house? None of you. They're really good in terms of burglary. Really good, really secure. But you've chosen not to have them, probably because of the fire risk. Reasonable? So it's a balance. It's not, there isn't perfect. Usability of bars on the windows is really inconvenient in a fire, so I'm told. But they're very good for security. So you've got to get that balance right. So, 5 things, 5 action points to take away. Pins and passwords, internet security software on all your devices, update your operating system and software, be careful what you share, and educate users. 5 things. Can you remember them? Yes. For how long? A couple of minutes or a bit longer? If your memory's not so good, write them down. You remember those 3 things? Pretty easy. If you can't remember them, try remembering that. Get Safe Online. We've got a website that covers just about every aspect of online safety and security. We cover just about everything. And we've got a dedicated business section, which is /business. We like keeping things nice and simple. And it's free. And it's free, impartial advice that you can help yourselves to any time you like. So make use of it. Some good resources on there. There's videos on there that are really short and sweet. Lots and lots of material. Any question you may have about this subject, you will probably find the answer to at our website. So thank you very much for listening, and that's it.
Thank you.